Hi, guys, and welcome to the Quinn podcast. Here we give you a look through the eyes of the most successful athletes, entertainers, entrepreneurs, and influencers on this planet. Be sure to check out all of the content at quinnpodcast.com. Enjoy the episode.
All right, bootstrap the entire company, $300 in your mom's basement. Want to sort of take me through the founding story from there, because I think that's a pretty cool way to come up.
Yeah, definitely, man. It's not for the faint of heart, I'll tell you that. To bootstrap a company with just a few $100s is there's so much joy and beauty in doing that. And there's also a lot of hard work, sweat, blood, tears, all of it that goes into it when you have such a short runway. And so you really need to, dive in and learn everything yourself. And obviously with that small amount of money, you really don't have an ability to get anyone to help you other than, maybe family and friends that want to just, roll up their sleeves for an hour or so. Um, but it was, this company was kind of just built on sheer passion. And I also like to throw in naivety, I would say, is another
Right.
big characteristic that I probably possessed at a high level early on. And, I'm grateful for that because I remember looking at, well, I had started to get into this. It started in graphic design, and I was doing logos and then it turned into website design. And I'd go meet these small to medium-sized business owners, and back in this time, I mean, this is about 15, 17 years ago. The internet wasn't what it is today. The It wasn't as established. So in order to get a website made, you would have to go to an agency, and it wouldn't be surprising to be $100,000 or more to build a website that could do a little more than just be an info only website, right? If you needed any serious functionality to it. And
Mm.
so, a basic business card style website was about $10,000 maybe or 20. And I would undercut those agencies and be able to stand up these websites and make them look really good and in a really short amount of time, a couple days to a week. And so I started doing that, and it was a great little side hustle for me as a young man, from about the time I was 13 until call it about 18. And I started getting into the apparel side of things when some of my clients needed, or that I did a website for, needed staff uniforms, and they needed their corporate logo on the left chest. And I remember, I didn't say no to a lot of things back then. I had so much capacity that it was, if somebody offered me something that I could make a dollar at, I was going to say yes. And so, can you make some corporate polos and hats for my staff was give me a couple weeks to figure it out, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And I got in touch with a local screen print embroidery guy in my hometown. He did all of our, youth football jerseys and things like that. He was kind of known around town. His name's Coop, and his wife's name's Randy. And they had a little, ma and pa operation in their basement. And I remember getting over to his house and saying, "Hey, can you do these corporate polos for me?" And I gave him the logo and kind of mocked it up on a polo shirt. But I was limited to just what, generic polos and quarter zips were in this, screen print catalog. So they're very, lower quality, generic blanks, no brand name on them, really, nothing recognizable. And so I picked the one that I thought looked the best. And when I got that back, the final product in my hand, and got to kind of touch and feel a tangible product with that logo on it, all stitched into it, I thought that was pretty cool. I remember having a bit of an aha moment thinking this is maybe something I want to continue to do because, that logo at one point was just an idea in my head, and then it was, sketched on paper. Then it was a digital kind of pretty version on a computer screen, and now I could touch and feel and hold a tangible product. And I fell in love with it, I think, at that point. But I got pretty fed up with the low quality options that I had for garments to decorate on, and so here comes the naivety part. I thought, well, I'll just make my own. How hard could that be? I'll just find a better fabric and come up with a fit that's better than what I'm seeing here. And I was I was so naive. I had no idea well, I might have assumed, but I had some sort of invincible mentality that I could just figure it out and make a great shirt. And so it wasn't long after that I bought a one-way ticket to China and just, sent it. I went for it at 19, I think I was, and um, just started diving into how to make the best garment. I started meeting with all these different factories and went to the fabric markets and it was a confusing, very honestly, kind of a overwhelming experience, but I didn't come home until I had it pretty well figured out and had my suppliers locked in and built some great relationships. And, I guess prior to that, I was going to the mall buying Nike hoodies or whatever brand, that I thought this thing fit nice, and I was cutting them up and measuring all the panels and really trying to understand it. But it was in the early stages. I knew how to build a website. I knew how to do the design stuff. I was pretty good at marketing, so I knew the social media stuff. I could figure out how to, heat press a shirt and do some of the decoration. Um, and so, I just had to be a jack of all trades early on and do kind of every step of it myself. And I honestly, I really recommend that young entrepreneurs who are just, wanting to scratch their itch and get into it, you guys gotta really do it that way. I mean, you could start with more than $300. I wouldn't recommend maybe that low of a budget, but there's something great about having your back against the wall and knowing that it's all on you. You have to figure it out. You don't have a big pool of money that a bunch of people have thrown in for you to use as resources. And I think your mindset is so different when it's, this is sink or swim. I better learn how to swim versus, I've got a whole pile of money here in the reserves, and you're more so concerned about how long do I have? What's my burn rate until I run out of money? And if you have enough in the pool and you have a far enough runway, if you can get through a year without needing to start turning, positive gross profit, net profit, I think that does people a disservice. You have to be so much more disciplined to try to
Mm,
not lose sight of what's important and not take for granted that you have a year. I mean, it's hard to accomplish a goal in a year without breaking that down into quarters and then months and then weeks and days, right? So I think having someone else's money just takes too much of the pressure off of you, and it also creates another very, very unwelcomed pressure in that I owe someone money, and if they're a serious investor, they're probably calling to check in and hold me accountable. And so I'm not at all saying that taking investment from people is wrong. It's a beautiful way to build a business, and many businesses require that. But what I am saying is my advice to young entrepreneurs is start with something that is lower stakes and cut your teeth a little bit and dive in and learn from your mistakes, because I can tell you right now, I don't know any successful entrepreneur who got up and hit a grand slam on their first at bat and they never had any failures beforehand. You learn so much in those moments, and you learn, yeah, I mean, just falling on your face, hitting a wall, metaphorically, obviously, but you learn so much in those moments of failure that shape you into who you are and help you get to your end goal. So I think just even if you're making up a fake company, it's so valuable to just dive in and try to build a website yourself and try to do the marketing yourself and see what people respond to and really become a master at the different elements of a business and understand what you're great at, what you're not great at. It's only going to help you know exactly what kind of team to build around you. And yeah, so that's kind of in a nutshell how I got started. It was, at a very young age that I got into the industry, and I skipped a detail in that story. I had started a jersey manufacturing company when I was a freshman in college at about 18, and gained a lot of experience there. I failed ultimately, and then I started up Unreal when I was kind of at the the lowest valley that I have seen in my business career, and I had nothing to lose. So it was one of those, I failed now a couple times. I don't have much left in the tank, but I love this and I want to keep doing this, and I'm young and I still have a lot left in me. So let's get back on the horse and see if we can make it work this time. And I'm grateful for the mentality and the resilience, I guess, that I had, and didn't
Hmm.
even know what that was at the time, but yeah, it's been a fun ride ever since. And to go from $300 to a company that's well on pace to doing about 100 million in revenue, and we've had every year of business so far, we've shown a net profit. It's been nothing short of kind of miraculous, and I owe that to the team that I've built around me for sure. We've built a team of athletes that they show up every day, work their butts off, and they're all everyone's kind of rowing the boat in the same direction with the same North Star and mission, and it's been a lot of fun, man. It's been a dream come true.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I really like what you said about the naivety. Like I sort of feel it. I'm 22. I sort of feel it fading from when I was like 19. So
Sure.
I feel that pressure, right? Like I still feel that it's like 95% there. Like just that invincibility, like you say. Like you can just figure it out, right? And also the motivation, like everything motivates you. And that's how I like experience it. It's
Is
pretty
that how you feel
cool.
too? You get motivated so easily, and
I'll tell you a story. I don't know if it's if it's if it's a good story to tell on the podcast, but I was in a strip club last Saturday for the
oh,
first time in my life, which was pretty funny. But I'm like, life could be like this every single day if I just get rich. Um, so so that's just
hmm.
sort of been my motivation the last week. But yeah, it's just whatever happens, and I see a car or whatever, or I meet someone, I'm like, yeah, this is this. I just gotta make something of myself.
Hmm. Yeah, man. I don't know. I'm not a big fan of that, but of strip clubs and that whole thing. It's not for me, but I'm more passionate about just building things and designing something and having a vision in my mind and seeing it come to life. Money and fame and all those things have never really been my driving force, but not to say that it's not, that's not enough to be
Mm.
a great driving force to get you to where you want to be. But I think that my advice for you would be not to get lost in that stuff. It's not what it's all about, man. There's a lot more to life than those things, I would say.
No, for sure. I totally agree
But
with you. It's just like
but
you say.
man,
It's
you're
just whenever I experience, right? It's just, oh, this is just another thing that, oh, I need to make something of myself. But I totally see what you're saying. Yeah.
yeah, man. And money's important. Don't get me wrong. You have to show a positive net income and keep that growing in order to do anything with the platform that you have. And so,
Hmm.
I think that it's a critical component to being successful in business, but it's not the end goal. It's these experiences, the pride in building something from scratch,
Hmm.
the people you get to meet and share the experience with, and the milestones that you accomplish through the journey are just that's what it's about, man. That's the juice. And yeah, you're so young, man, 22, and I don't want to hear that it's fading yet because it's if I can be candid and honest with you, I think it's probably that the purpose needs to be realigned. I think that the
Hmm.
purpose of what are you trying, why do you truly want to do podcasting? If that's the end, if you want to be a big media broadcaster, what is it behind that gets you, why'd you get into this, right? Because you could have gone into finance and moved to Wall Street and traded stocks and made a couple million bucks quick, right? And you could be at the strip clubs all you want. So why media? What is it about this?
No, it's definitely a more mature way to think about it. Why this was initially just really the meeting people, like you say, just sharing stories, seeing passion in other people. Um, that is what it was initially. Yeah, but it still
Yeah,
is. It
those
still is.
shared
It's just,
experiences.
it's just something like I said, just an example that came up. That's just
For
top of
sure.
mind.
No,
But I hear you. No, it's a more mature way to think about it. What was it for you at my age? What sort of kept you going in that sense? What motivated you?
um, I think there was a couple things. I always had a vision in my mind of seeing people walking around the streets wearing Unreal and a product that I created, maybe not even unreal at the time when I started envisioning that. I remember going to a mall and thinking, gosh, that would be so cool to have a rack of a whole display here of my creations with my own little hang tags with logos on it and big advertisements with the models. And
Hmm.
um, interestingly enough, I was never really a fashion guy growing up either. So I don't know why that kind of that was something floating around in my mind. It wasn't was never really that into. I always like looking good, but I didn't. I was never obsessed with clothing necessarily. I think there was a lot of different paths I could have gone on. I just wanted to start from zero, have a vision, and build it, brick by brick, and see it come to fruition. And then ultimately, I think see people get joy out of something that I created was a big, driving force for me. And then ultimately, I think if I'm being very honest with you, I'm real competitive and I hate losing more than I like winning. And so I think a lot of that competitive drive got me through the low
Hmm.
points where I thought, this thing's probably going to come to an end and we've run out of money. We're not getting any business and it's not going all that well. I think a lot of the resiliency just comes from that competitive spirit for sure.
Yeah. How long did you go where it was like not working at all? Like you were just doing whatever and it was just not taking off.
You know, I think it's all relative. I guess in the first year, second year, third year, I don't think I ever had a full year or longer where I thought this really isn't working. I was fortunate enough to start so young that, when I'm 19 years old, I didn't have a big commitment at home. I didn't have, kids and a wife and a mortgage and all the things that you have later on in life. And so I think I had enough time and capacity to um, give it everything that I have and not feel like it's a side hustle for me. And for that reason, I think I was always able to be scrappy enough to find a way to, show a net profit on the profit loss statement at the end of the year. But that being said, I ate ramen noodles and PB&J sandwiches for probably the first 4 or 5 years and did not take a paycheck out of the company.
Hmm.
And I've always kind of had that mentality of just keeping my chips on the table, if you will, and really believing in what I'm doing. Um, so yeah, I've had stretches, during COVID where that was a big one where I thought, I think it's really now is probably going to be the end here because when that happened, 80% of our business was wholesale focused. So we were selling into retail stores or to pro sports teams, and we really hadn't caught traction yet on our direct consumer online business, which is now surprising to hear you say that you feel like you've seen it for over a decade, and this my brand's always been around to you is so surprising because there was not a whole lot of people who knew who we were even 5 years ago. So for you to be from the Netherlands and to know our brand as well as you do, that's pretty cool for me to hear at least. But
Hmm.
we didn't have that much traction. It was about 19% of our business was direct to consumer. I think we had about 17 employees at the time, and then you can imagine when COVID happens, the lockdown here really shut down that 81% of the business selling into the wholesale channels. And so we didn't have enough over in the D2C side to sustain the business that we had and the overhead that we had. We had a big headquarters and 17 people and yeah, a lot of expenses. So as I talked to different, mentors and counsel around me, my accountants, things like that, people like that, everybody had similar advice. It was just, hey, you need to furlough your staff and just do what you can to keep the lights on, cut your expenses and try to hang on until the world comes back to normal. Hopefully it's not too long from now. And I hated that. I hated that idea of this is out of my control and I don't know. I mean, they might not be right. It might go on for 2 years. There's no way we're going to survive that. And so for me, it was that was keeping me up at night. And I thought, what if we really double down and take a big risk here and try to go for, building this D2C business? And I had no idea at the time that the world would pivot too, and people would have to start buying online. And I mean, obviously, hindsight's 2020, but you didn't realize it in the moment that men would start really driving towards buying clothing online, men and women, but men in particular. We just didn't do that. If you think back to, pre-COVID, we always went to the mall to get, or the store or whatever, to get our stuff, or our wives or whatever bought it for us at the store. But that was a huge wind at our back, that it kind of forced people to get comfortable with that, with buying online. And then, the business casual world turned to athleisure apparel, and our quarter zips and polos and comfy pants, fit that mold perfectly. And it didn't take long for a lot of opportunities to start opening up. And so it was a big risk. We tripled our ad spend, and we had a burn rate for the first time in our lives. I figured we were gonna run out of gas in about 3 months if we didn't, kind of strike oil, if you will.
Hmm.
And so it was a high pressure situation. There were people working for me who had left a big corporate job to come, try to help me build this thing, and they were taking a big risk, and it was a lot for them to accept the challenge and say, let's do this. But we all linked arms and went after it, and it really paid off for us. And so I think, if it's crazy to say, but that really turbulent time through COVID actually was probably the biggest blessing that we had in this business. And we probably wouldn't be as successful as we are today if it had not happened. We probably would have kept doing business as usual, just scrappy, trying to find a way to sell some, wholesale orders to whoever would take it. And so definitely grateful for that now, looking back, and it's certainly has molded and shaped the trajectory of our brand and this company overall.
Would you say that was sort of the biggest breakthrough moment, or the biggest challenge you guys got through?
I think so. Yeah. I mean, we've had a
Right.
few others that have probably had not quite the same downside risk, but had maybe more of a, it's hard to say if anything had more upswing than that. But we've had some we've had no shortage of moments where, we feel like this is a pivotal, challenge that could make or break us. And,
Hmm.
getting in with the NFL has been another huge accomplishment and milestone, but also major challenge. I think when we first got in, with the Minnesota Vikings in 2021 or 2022, that that came with no playbook. It was, each team had the NFL opened a new opportunity where each team could choose one local licensee to partner up with, and produce, a limited series of products. And so it was kind of like they were framing it almost like an artist program. And the joke I threw at them was, I don't know any artists that can afford this program, because it was not cheap. It was, the NFL licensing world is pretty high stakes, high dollars, and so we ended up declining it the first year and said, let's push it to next year so we can, really make dedicated inventory for this program. And but again, it came with no playbook. They didn't tell me, here's on average how many units, we would sell of any given style. So plan accordingly. It was, you're on your own. And so
Hmm.
I did the numbers, just kind of reversed it backwards from a target projection back to how many units do we need to produce in order to hit this target number. And I looked at it through a lens of, we want to make profit on this. We want it to be worth our time. And I ended up ordering a lot more units than I should have, probably. And it was a few months later that the team at, what's now Fanatics, was called Legends at the time, flew in from Tennessee, toured our office, very, very soft-spoken, nice, down south business people. And they were really impressed with the brand, impressed with us as a team, and we sat down at the table, and then it came out. I said, well, here's what I'm thinking. Here's how many units I ordered. I think it was 3,600 units of hoodies, and it was 600 per drop, six different drops. And I said, so I got 600 per drop. I think, our website, we could probably handle 200. And I was thinking maybe you guys do 400 in the stadium. And I almost got laughed out of my own office. They said, we've never sold more than 40 of any given Nike hoodie on a single game day. We're not
Hmm.
going to do that. And I thought, Whoa, this is not good. I just ordered 10 times as many units or more, 12 times as many units as Nike sells on a game day. That is shocking to me. We better figure this out. But my heart dropped into my stomach, and I thought I might have just drove us into a cliff or right off the cliff here.
Mhm.
And and so we got creative and we came up with, a game plan. Again, another back against the wall, we got to figure this out type of moment. But we developed this limited edition drop program where we decided, instead of revealing all six of our sweatshirt designs, let's go one by one. We'll release them one at a time. We'll just tease it on the front end, and we'll tell everyone there's limited units available. They won't be reproduced, which was true. And it worked, man. It was crazy. It was, I think we sold out of the first run in an hour and a half, and then it just tapered down to about a minute from there. By the time we got to about drop three or four, we were selling, 400 units in a minute at $100, $110 a piece. And this is I mean, I got them on my wall. This is the original year one collection here.
Mhm.
And, it was $108 for hooded sweatshirt was pretty high. And still, I mean, it is high. So I mean, we weren't giving them away either. It was really, solid marketing, and that effort right there really shaped kind of the future of our brand. Now we've really leaned into this collaboration strategy, and I think it's one of the big differentiating factors of our brand when you compare us to a Viore or Lululemon or Alo. We're doing these collabs with sports teams and like-minded brands, and um, you know, giving something new and exciting on a month-to-month basis for our fans and customers, and introducing our brand to new markets all the time. And so that's been such a fun, story for us to look back on and lean into and see how that's just changed our trajectory. Very similar to the COVID scenario.
Mhm. For sure, man. In those initial days, what was it? This is something something I'm like sort of experiencing. I really resonate to your story, right? In those early days, sort of being scared of growth. I want to say like those numbers you're talking, like that. Was that something you were open to at that time, or was it something like, no, we're never gonna hit that? That's like a pipe dream.
What do you mean by scared of growth? Scared of it or
In the
doubting
sense like
ourselves?
we're gonna do nine figures a year. Like, was that something you held as a possibility back then already?
Yeah, okay. Yeah, it's a great question. I think, people ask me that all the time. Did you ever envision that it would get to this point? And, my short answer is, well, yeah, that's why I did it. But but at the same time, I think there was so much doubt in my mind too. If I'm being honest, I
Hmm.
think it was when I started the brand, it was honestly intended to be a side project. I was gonna do kind of made to order t-shirt, screen printed t-shirts, and just try to go after the ice hockey demographic. I grew up playing ice hockey, and so, think just a t-shirt like I'm wearing now, but a hockey inspired, graphic on a lifestyle hockey guy t-shirt or whatever. And it was really low stakes, and that's how, for one, that's why I thought it was okay to start with $300. I wasn't intentionally trying to build this really, really great athleisure brand at the time, but it was about, 3 months, maybe 6 months in that the vision changed. Again, I was looking at this as I'm just going to stand this up. It's going to be a side project. I always had this, idea for a brand called Unreal, because athletes use that term so frequently, when they're describing these indescribable great moments in their lives or in sport. And I thought, let's coin that. Let's try to make it into a brand. But the word Unreal spelled all the way out with the vowels doesn't look great. It's got a little bit of a cheesy connotation to it, I feel like. So I minimize that, and just would put it on like the back yoke of a t-shirt or whatever, and have the graphic on the front be the what was the eye-catching thing. And and then about 3 or 6 months in, I'm laying in bed one night and I thought, Unreal's got like it just sounds good as phonetically it sounds good. I got to do something about the logo, and I started just tampering with it, and it was probably 1 or 2 in the morning. I finally got to the logo that you see on my hat, the UNRL, and kind of was tweaking the letters and stylizing it. And as soon as I was, kind of done with my first draft, I remember putting it up. I went to Google Images, grabbed the Nike logo, Adidas, Under Armour, and then I threw them all on a page with the Unreal logo next to it. And yeah, that looks right. That
Hmm.
looks like a brand that deserves to be on that shelf with those other three. And I think it was at that moment where I said, "This is not a side project anymore. This is gonna be it. And I'm gonna go after this. I'm gonna really get serious about making the best garments, and you know, um, yeah, try to master this craft." And so
Hmm.
I think it was probably a little after I started that I started to see the real vision for the potential and what it could be. And probably at that point is when I thought, yeah, this could be a 9-figure, brand every annual, business. It could be even bigger than that if I really, push this thing hard. But it, I don't know. I wasn't living in a fantasy land either. I wasn't like, it's gonna happen, and just almost like blind arrogance. Throughout the early years, I certainly didn't have that level of confidence. I just had my head down, man. I was just grinding. I just worked really hard to try to keep pushing to the next level. And it's hard. I will tell you that. It's very, very hard. And, guys that I get a lot of calls, now of young guys that want to start a brand and kind of follow in my footsteps and do what I've done. Um, and I try to give as much advice as I can because, if there's anything that I can give back and help someone avoid all the speed bumps and wrong turns that I took, that makes I can get a lot of fulfillment out of that. But when I hear things like I'll typically ask, what's the motivation for you? And when guys say, well, I want to be rich and make a million bucks, I say, well, again, you could go trade stocks and do that. If that's your if that's the motivation, guys like me who are obsessed with this game, I'm gonna run you over, and that's just
I,
reality. But
I really like that we got the narrative going on that I'm only in this for the strippers now.
no, I
That's
know
not why
what
I
you
told
mean.
the
I know what
story.
you mean. I know. No, no, no. I know what you mean. And that's again, that's you are going to find that purpose, and it took me a while, man. It did. I couldn't quite describe what it was for me. In the early, the purpose and motivation are a little bit different in my mind too, by the way. Let me clarify that. Um, when I got some success, let's say I think we were about 6 years in at this point, maybe even further, probably 6, 7 years in, I've started to make some money. On paper, I'm a young millionaire. I'm 24, 25, and I'm not paying myself to that level, but in on paper, again, within the company, I can at least check that box off my goals list or whatever. But I would come home after a long day's work, and I had this really cool condo. It was like a bachelor pad in the city, and I was Skyway connected to the office. I had a gym in between. I had, season tickets for the Minnesota Wild, and just no obligations, no big responsibilities. I'd party on the weekends and dating girls and the whole, all of it. But it seemed great on the surface, but I would come home and I'd sit on the couch, and there was just something missing, and I felt very empty and unfulfilled. And it was like, man, how am I not happy right now? I've done everything I planned to do, and I get to hang out with celebrities and pro athletes and all this stuff, and I should be so happy. But something was missing, and it was that fulfillment piece, right? I mean, it just kind of dawned on me, like, I don't think God gave me these talents to use them in the way that I'm using them and just to make a great t-shirt, right? That's not it. And so I've always done this giving back thing through the company, but it wasn't necessarily emphasized as much as I should have been emphasizing it. We give back 10% of our profits to charities that everything from pediatric health, children that are going through cancer, to supporting military heroes and their families. And yeah, you name it, underprivileged youth that never had a chance, and some really cool causes. But it wasn't until that point when I got really serious about it and built this program around the giving back piece, because I started to think about, well, what gives me joy? And just, I guess, loving other people and helping other people is really important to me. And I think that that's ultimately a huge piece, if not the big piece, of why I'm here, right? It's not, again, to make great t-shirts, just like, Adam Thielen, our one of our Unreal athletes, who's a wide receiver in the NFL and a Pro Bowler. I don't think he was put on this earth just to catch passes on a Sunday. I think he was put here to, utilize that platform so that he can make a big impact and use his influence to reach as many people as possible, help as many kids as possible have a chance at achieving their dreams like he did. And so, yeah, that's what I think it all, comes down to for Unreal. Is it's not about the flashy, cool, fun things all the time. It's, those are great, and we get to do those, and it's enjoyable. Don't get me wrong. It's really fun to be in this position. But we get a platform that we can use to really make an impact. And we can give, I mean, last year we gave $1.3 million to different charities. And what a fun thing, to be able to make that kind of a dent and an impact on people in the community that they really need a boost and need some help. And so that's the fulfillment, the passion and the drive and all of that. I think was just, I wanted to build something, but that once you've built it and you built something pretty cool that people like, that flame can start to burn out a little bit, and you need something more to keep you going. So, yeah, there's a lot about that too, about kind of, at each chapter, kind of realigning with what is your driving motivation and purpose, and being able to line that up with where you're at in life. I think is also very important, especially on a long career trajectory in the same business, like what I'm doing and planning to do. Yeah, another conversation, but a little different than probably most serial entrepreneurs who are just, they want to build it, scale it, flip it, start over, do it again, and keep repeating that cycle. I'm wired a little bit differently in that I want to build this brand to, stand the test of time, and be something that lives on longer than I do, hopefully.
For sure. What are you most proud of on the giving back part? You have like a specific story or specific thing that you're like, yeah, this is amazing that we were like able to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we just got recognized we've given over $1 million to the Masonic Children's Hospital, and that's been a really fun one. That it's a Minneapolis hospital that helps young kids that are battling cancer and life-threatening challenges that I can't fathom going through that, especially at such a young age. And so being able to make that big of an impact over there has been really cool. But, I think honestly, some of the most gratifying moments are writing a check much smaller than that, $10,000, $20,000 to an individual family that really, really needs this help. The insurance isn't covering their medical bills, and their young kid needs this treatment or something. We've had a few of those moments, and those are some of my favorite. They just it's smaller stakes, but it's a bigger impact for that one person, as opposed to the big hospital that it goes into a big pool and a bunch of other people are putting money into, and it maybe just doesn't have the same weight on it
Mm-hmm.
that helping one individual person or family does.
Yeah, for sure, man. No, it's dope. It's cool that that's a thing for you. That's pretty amazing. I asked
Thank you.
ChatGPT how many, yeah, no, for sure, how many new apparel brands launched last year, and it gave me 70,000. Um, what do you, how big was sort of timing for you, and what part do you see just you as an entrepreneur, sort of that ratio?
Great question.
Thanks.
People ask me that all the time, and it was timing a big factor? I don't think so. I think it arguably is easier now with all the resources at your disposal. You can fire away at ChatGPT and find out what your odds are out of the gate. Maybe that's not a good idea, but But you can have ChatGPT build you a website, render up concepts for your brand logo, your design concepts. I mean, you don't need to be as much of a craftsman these days as you did back then. Standing up a website was a a huge challenge back then, and to be able to do it on a pretty much $0 budget, buy a domain name pretty much was the expense for me. But to to do that, it required a ton of time and energy and investment into, learning and figuring things out to design garments. There's tools now that I would have loved to have at my disposal back then. So not that there's different challenges now, not that it's easier, it's more saturated, right? It's more,
Hmm.
uh, it probably wasn't 70,000 the year I started, but it was probably 50. I mean, it was still, you know, every kid was trying to build a brand still at that time, and not just kids. The part that has taken me a long time to answer and figure out the answer to rather is, why did I succeed in this and break through when world famous A-list celebrities have tried to do this with millions of dollars in their resources and millions of followers built into their social media, and they don't win? And that's been a hard question for me to answer, man. I think I've come to a conclusion on it, and it's just it took about a decade of doing the right thing and not trying to cut corners. And and I think that whole back against the wall, I need to figure this out mentality was really critical in that. Where if I'm a famous movie star and I have that day job and that's my main thing, but I want to start a brand here on the side, I'm going to hire an A team to run it for me. I think you lose a little bit of that. You don't need to win. It would be nice
Hmm.
to win, but you don't need to, right? And I was in a position where I absolutely needed to. And I think what played to my advantage was that I wasn't, intrinsically motivated by the money. So I wasn't trying to get there as fast as possible, kind of, you know, put lipstick on a pig and sell it. And there were certainly, I've made that mistake a few times and paid for it. But, I realized early on that you have to do things the right way. You really need to build a great product, build a great experience. And try to be the best in the game at what you're doing. Otherwise, you're not going to get very far. And so I think it's a decade of doing the right thing, and it started to pay off finally. It was persistence.
The right thing, meaning being real to people, being transparent, being selling something that actually does what it promises.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not even talking about like the charitable thing. I don't think that has
Sure,
any element of our success necessarily on
sure.
building the business, but it's it's not copying someone else's product and trying to just swap your logo onto it, or you know dream it up on your website and put in these features that make it sound like it's the greatest thing ever and it's really mediocre when you receive it. I think it's when a customer has a bad experience, you're falling on that sword and painfully taking a loss even when you don't need to make it right. Or even when you're not in the wrong, you're taking one in the chin and paying for it. Um, it's writing these processes that are, maybe not the quickest and easiest way to get it done, but you're building a knowledge base of information that's going to help the next person, and kind of leaving a legacy in that way of building this foundation, again, brick by brick, and setting it up to make the next person's life and job easier. Um, yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, man. Here's a good example. One thing that differentiates us from a lot of our competitors is, in this business, we work on seasonal timelines and schedules. So there's, there's two major seasons in a year. There's probably six deliveries for most brands like ours. So every other month, you're delivering another catalog full of products to the market and to the retailers. And oftentimes, it takes 12 to 18 months from concept to final delivery on a new style. So you can imagine how, those seasons start to overlap each other, and you're developing this collection that's a year and a half out, and you got to start the next collection and you got to finish the last one. And it's really difficult to juggle it all, and you end up running out of time. It's very common here in this world to you're at a point where you're at the deadline, and in order to get production started and deliver on time, you need to sign off on the garment and say it's good enough, even if it's not. I think a lot of our competitors will say, it's fine, it's not perfect, but it's fine. And that whole good enough mentality doesn't fly here. And in fact, it's written into one of our core values of being elite is, good enough just isn't. We're not gonna do that and settle for that. And so, it's come at the detriment of, you know, tough phone calls with our retailers and saying, hey, unfortunately, we're not going to make it here on this new style. I know you're excited about it, but I need you to trust me that we're gonna deliver 2 months late, and it's gonna be worth it for you because it's gonna be that much better of a product. And I don't feel good about putting a Me Too product on your shelf. And so I think, having that type of mentality across the whole business and carrying that into everything we do is a huge reason why we've broken through and found the success that we found. And, I think lastly is having faith, and
Hmm.
having faith in God, and that there's a bigger purpose to this whole thing is so important and so critical. I mean, I've quite literally surrendered it all over and said, look, God, if this isn't where we're supposed to be, just close the door, and I'll have to accept that and move on. I didn't want to do that, but then the doors started to open, and I that was what I asked for. If this is where I'm supposed to be, show me and open some doors. And that was kind of through that whole COVID thing when I thought the business was close, we were going to go under. It was, turning it over to God, and then all of a sudden these doors opened like you wouldn't believe. Barstool, sports calls out of nowhere, and
Hmm.
huge media company, and says, hey, you got the best polos and hats I've ever worn. We should work together. And
Right.
I almost fell out of my chair. We were doing everything we could to get an opportunity like that, and it just fell into our laps, and wasn't something we had to go pay for and fly around the country to pitch them on it or anything like that.
Mm.
And so there was that, and the NFL, and it's just been one door after the next since then. And so I think we know where we're in the right place, where we are where we're supposed to be. And yeah, that's been huge for us for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. Sort of the doing the right thing. It's sort of easy, right? Yeah, to not do the right thing. You have all these guys, especially online, with like just early success, and I mean like a couple million, whatever a year. But I talk to guys like you, and I talk to older guys, and it's like all these like serious companies that like are established and well, guys that have been around for 3 4 decades. Um, like reputation is like a real thing. I'm sort of starting to understand that and internalize that. And
Hmm.
you like something can come back like 30 years later to sort of bite you. And if you've been doing the right thing for so long,
Hmm.
and always speaking the truth, you don't have to lie. You don't have to keep account of all these stories you tell. Then yeah, that appears to be where it's at. So.
For sure, man. You hit the nail on the head. Not doing the right things is a lot easier, right? I'm speaking from a glass tower here. Obviously, you look like you got a pretty good build on you, and you probably work out consistently, right? I'm pretty skinny, but I do more brain reps than chest reps, I guess. But correlating it to the fitness world, right? Like you don't get there by some quick fix, answer. I mean, do they have cheat codes over there too? Yeah, they do, but
Sure.
it's going to come at a detriment of your health, and it's going to fall off. All that muscle will fall off if you're just, juicing for 2 months and working the glamour muscles, or whatever for a short period of time, and then think you're just going to coast from there. It doesn't work, right? And so I think that, this whole AI revolution that's coming right now, and that we're living through is, um, it's so hard to even put a finger on how I feel about it. I think it was scary at first. It's like, oh boy, you think about writers, and it's almost like I mean, that was the first one where I was like, these guys are going to get smoked. Their jobs, copywriters are dead.
Hmm.
And but I'm wrong. I'm wrong about that, and or I was wrong about that rather. But now you're starting to see it across. I mean, even like to produce a really great social media video, I thought it would be years and years before that became a risky, vertical here at risk of AI taking over. No, we're there. We're there. You can do some incredible CAD rendering and things with AI now that it's only going to get exponentially better and better. So how do you separate yourself when, I don't believe that the separation is going to come down to just who whispers to AI the best. I don't. I think that the real authentic skill is going to start to emerge. The people who are true copywriters, you're going to tell that, you're going to be able to know, you can already tell what stuff's been written by AI and what's been written by a poet, or a wordsmith who is a master of their craft. And same with like a video, or a movie or whatever. It's it's a tool that we will leverage, no doubt. I use it every day, AI on a chat GPT. And if it's kind of one of those like if you can't beat them, join them type things. And it's enhanced the efficiency and how I do things and enhanced the output of the quality in what I'm doing and producing. Taking a lot of the redundancies out. I'm still trying to figure out how to use it as effectively as possible to where it really is making a difference on the tedious, rudimentary tasks and things that we do here. Um, but I think that it's you're going to see the people that really put the time into master the craft are the ones that rise to the top because, the prompts of spit out a vision and a brand name and a logo and build me a website are going to be too obvious, pretty
Hmm.
soon here. So the real creative, authentic brands are going to stand out from the rest, and that's exciting to think about too. So yeah, I think repetition is so important. Just really digging deep and understanding all aspects of your business at a really high level is so important. And yeah, man. Hopefully that answered the question. I think I got a
Yeah,
little
man.
sideways on the answer,
No,
but
you're good. No, especially yeah, I like what you're saying in that. Like you can sort of get 90% there with like AI and like cutting
some
corners.
things, yeah, yeah,
But it's 90% and it that doesn't stand the test of time. So
right, right.
and yeah, yeah, it's a fun time for sure. I've said that before on the show. Like I'm happy I got like 2 decades of life in without it. Uh, but I'm curious to see what's around the corner. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I think, man, authenticity is so important, right? Like I could have this interview that I'm having with you with a chat GPT robot,
Hmm.
and I think that I could probably get a robot here to speak more eloquently, ask
Yeah.
sharper questions, and conversely, you could put someone in my seat, or you could put a robot in my seat and answer those questions a heck of a lot clearer and better than I do. But people like authentic, real
Yeah, but it
stories,
wouldn't be
and
real. Because
exactly.
I've asked you three of my whatever 30 prepared questions, and then we're going in a completely different direction. But like two or three times, I'm like, oh, this is something I needed to hear. Like this is not what I prepare, but this is something I needed to hear. So that's
Sorry
pretty
about that. I
cool.
have a tendency of rambling and taking people on a
No,
ride
no,
when
no,
I do
no.
these.
But that's good, right? Like what we're saying. You can get 90% of the way there, and it's gonna be good, but it's not gonna be great.
Yep,
Um, so
yep, absolutely. Well, let's try to
yeah.
rapid fire. I want to hear some of the other questions that you have
Oh
prepared
fuck.
here. I'll try to show more brevity in
I
my
don't have
responses.
I've all like Lex Friedman like deep questions. That's sort of my thing. Shit. I'll do three quick ones.
And that's why you're great at what you
Um.
do.
Wow, I appreciate that. Yeah, I can do fucking rapid fire ones. I'm gonna do deep ones. The culture at Unreal, the sort of the vision before what it is right now. Um. Where that came from, sort of personal philosophy on culture building, because you seem to got that like 100% right from what I'm seeing and all the influencers you guys work with and everything.
Yeah, man, again, authentic's a big piece of that. One of our core values is true. When I started this brand, I didn't appreciate enough the what goes into core values and how much that shapes your culture. to be honest with you, I looked at that stuff as just fluffy language that big corporate companies put on bury it on the bottom of their website, to check the box, and sometimes they put it on a postcard or whatever in the office, and I thought it was cute, but it's not.
Hmm.
That's not going to get us to where we're going. And I even overlooked in the early years building, or the importance of hiring great people and building a great team. I think large in part because I couldn't afford to hire great people, so I had to figure out how to learn it myself.
Hmm.
And so that was the wrong mentality, and it took me probably 5 years to really learn that and understand that. But we started putting our core values on paper, and took it more seriously after we started really diving into reading these business books that we're kind of hitting a wall when we got to about 1 million in revenue or so. And that seems like forever ago, and it seems like such a small number, but hitting 1 million in sales, I think in this world it's a big milestone in a startup clothing brand world. And then, I think hitting 1 million's cute. A 5 million is you might have something. And if you can break through 10 million, I think you should keep running and see how far you can go is kind of the way I see this. But, so going back to we're at about 1 million, we're stuck. We are not making good headway. Started reading books and came across Traction and this whole EOS mentality, entrepreneurial operating system is what it stands for. And the book Traction is by Gino Wickman. And they stress the importance of your core values, and it's kind of I think it's like a 3 pack of tools, but your core values, your accountability charts. So instead of org chart, it's really who's accountable for each big responsibility within the business. And then your what they call a VTO, Vision Traction Organizer, which is start with a 10-year goal, a 3-year goal, 1-year goal, break your 1-year goal down into quarters and try to make them more attainable, but everything ladders up to that big, crazy 10-year goal.
Hmm.
And when we got serious about that and implemented it is when we really started to, start put, putting real gas into the engine and going and keeping our eye on the ball really. And started hitting goals on a regular basis. And, you know, the, um, the culture has shaped around that in a way that, it started with just a bunch of different, words that we put down as our values. And then a few years ago, I started looking at those closer and kind of reworked it into athlete is the acronym for it. So
Hmm.
agile is our first one. Team is a second. Hustle's so big here that I think people are scrappy and work so hard, and they don't treat it like a 9 to 5. Check in, check out. Not that we promote like take your work home with you and let it consume your life by any means, but it just means more to people. And when it's necessary to put in that extra effort, people are not shy about that. Um, Legacy, as I mentioned, is kind of that whole build a brand that stands the test of time, and do something with the platform, give back 10%. Elite is we want to make the best products in the world and be proud of everything we do and try to make the best product on the market every time we get to the drawing board. True is the next one, and showing integrity in our product and how we communicate with people. Being authentic and real and honest is super important. And then evolve is the last one. So just that continuous improvement mentality of every day I'm here to get better, and I'm going to learn from my mistakes and welcome the feedback, and just keep getting sharper and sharper. And yeah, we believe iron sharpens iron here. And yeah, I think everybody we those are the kind of characteristics that we really dig in and look for in interviews. And that's maybe
Hmm.
the biggest thing is once you have that established, it's you interview somebody and you go, I like them. They seem talented, but you're not sure with the gut feeling. If you can go back to a central checklist of do they fit this mold is so important, and you can hold people accountable to it on a an annual performance review basis or whatever frequency you do. But grade your people based on how well do they attain to the culture. If they're it's all about me and I'm a selfish person. I don't really work well with the team, but I'm a high performer. I just don't really have anyone's back, that's not going to fit. I'd rather have somebody that's an average performer that is a all-in team player who will take the shirt off their back and give it to the person in need. That's the person I want on my team over the highly skilled, all in it for themselves type of person. So that's one example of how you can, leverage those and use it to build a great team. And you got to communicate it all the time, and that's something that I think I can do even better at is just making sure to remind people of these values more than just yeah, it's written on the wall in a few different areas of the office, but how do we pull people back to that in the day-to-day thick of it when we're solving problems or facing challenges is where I think I can do better.
Gotcha,
But
man.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, let's leave it at that. I think we're running late, but this was amazing.
I'm glad, man. Hey, thank you for having me on. This is an honor to be here, and I'm really excited to see where you go, man. It's cool to hear from a 22-year-old, and you said you're the number 4 podcast in the world for entrepreneurship category. Is that right?
Netherlands, it is. Should
In
correct.
Netherlands.
Transparent
Okay.
about it.
Well,
Yes.
nonetheless, that is fantastic. Way to go, man. Yeah, proud of you and everything you're doing, and just stick with it and continue to master your craft and be as good as you can be at this, or if it's something different down the road. Yeah, it'll be fun to keep tabs on you and see where this thing goes.
Thanks for listening to the Quinn podcast. If you enjoyed it, you can go to quinnpodcast.com to check out all of the previous episodes. quinnpodcast.com.